Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisholm, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. Hey everybody, John Chisholm here for the Song Revolution podcast. Thanks for being with us today. We've got a great show for you. I am so thrilled to be bringing you newly minted Grammy Award winner, Zach Williams. It seems like everything this guy's touching right now is turning to gold. On his hit single, Chain Breaker, he's had over 17 million YouTube views. And on the follow-up single called Old Church Choir, totally singable, totally cool. The last I checked, he had over 11 million views. And he's had Dove Awards, K-Love Fan Awards, Billboard Music Awards, and now a new Grammy. It's cool. I mean, this guy is bursting on the scene, and he's a good guy. Had a great visit with him. This guy knows the power of Jesus in his life. His own chains of addiction were broken as he surrendered to the love of Jesus, and now he's taking that passion that he used to have for pleasing crowds to pleasing Jesus as a devoted husband, father, worship leader, songwriter, and now way cool artist. So his music is kind of straightforward and gutsy, but man, it's just hitting home with a whole lot of people. So take a little time, sip some sweet tea, and sit down with me and Zach Williams. Welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, sitting here with my new friend Zach Williams, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think first of all, we've got to just go ahead and get the big congratulations out of the way for your Grammy. How does that feel, man? I mean, Best Contemporary Christian Music Album for Chain Breaker, which is your debut release, man. I mean, how many people do that, and how does it feel? Are you still like high on it?
I'm still pinching myself. I was actually just talking to my wife the other day, just yesterday, and I was like, I said, it still doesn't seem real, that I won a Grammy. I grew up in a little bitty small town, and stuff like this just doesn't happen to people. And I told her, though, for me, the song was nominated last year. And for me, just as a songwriter, just this award means so much more than just having one song recognized. Like, to have a whole record of everything you've put your heart and soul into, all these songs that have something behind them that means something to you, to be recognized by, peers in the music industry and, awarded this, really the highest honor you can get in music, it's an unbelievable feeling. With that being said, though, I don't think songwriters, I know myself, I don't set out to write songs for awards. And so, I'm hopefully that's the reason behind it. Maybe God just blessed me for, kind of my approach to this. It was just really just wanting to put out there songs that God had given me and hoping that they can touch and transform other people's lives. And yeah, so far he's touching mine and transforming mine, and hopefully a lot of others in the process.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I watched the Grammys the other night. I mean, this is the week. That was just last Sunday night. So what was it like kind of being in the room with all the glitz and the glamour and all the show stuff?
It was really cool. I mean, obviously you kind of get a lot of the nerves out when you first get there. We go to a pre-telecast that starts at like 3:00 in the afternoon, and pretty much 90% of the awards are given away between 3 and 5 o'clock, And so they've got you there on the red carpet. You're doing all these interviews, and a lot of the nerves are kind of gone away by the time you get down the red carpet and get your pictures made 100 times. And then we go in and set through, all the awards, and everybody's there at that, After they called my name and I won, I was backstage, and I'm a huge fan of just Jason Isbell and Chris Stapleton. I love their I love the style of music, growing up where I grew up, and just my similar style. I've always loved their songwriting. And he won like right after I accepted my award. So I was hanging out backstage doing all the interviews, and here he comes, and we took a picture together, and it's just really cool how, the other artists, they have respect for your music as well. They knew who I was and knew some of the songs. And so that kind of makes you feel good to know that you're in a room full of other people that obviously know who you are and know your music. And it's not just kind of, you're an outcast because you're in the Christian music world, which is what I think a lot of people think. But I think the Christian music was received, very well. And then the actual televised performance. I mean, you're getting to see, the best in the business do their thing. And it was just really cool, to see how it's all put together. And from what we see at TV at home to what it actually is like there, I would hate to know I was running the show for something like that.
Oh, gosh. I couldn't imagine. I mean, it's so complex. The what?
I said there are so many moving parts to something like that.
Oh, gosh. It must have been exciting, though. I mean, Bruno Mars, for crying out loud. I mean,
he's so talented. I mean, they were all good. I really liked. I'll be honest. It was so last year we were there, and it was a little different with the whole Beyonce. Her performance was very dark and very kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And this year there was a message of like hope and peace in a lot of the music, even though a lot of it was political, like with Lady Gaga's and Kesha's and Sam Smith. I mean, I don't think some of these people I don't know if they're Christians or not, but I mean, there was 2 or 3 songs that they were talking about praying the whole time. And I was like, wow, this is different. I think we're in a place in our world where people are starting to realize that, that's the only way that things are going to change is if we start praying and start believing that there is a God that can change all this,
Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of caught that as well, and I'm a bit of a Gaga fan. I think she's so incredibly talented. Her
performance is one of my favorites.
Oh my gosh. When she did the Super Bowl and just her album with Tony Bennett, she's an amazing talent. So, but we're not here to talk about Lady Gaga. We're here to talk about you. So, I'm glad you had that experience. And again, a million congrats on that. I mean, and just kind of the whole debut thing. So, Did I read you're from Jonesboro, like Arkansas, or are you
Jonesboro, Arkansas?
Man, we've driven through there 1,000 times because my in-laws live up in Mountain Home, so we know the roads over there. But
I used to spend a lot of time on that lake. Norfolk.
Oh man, well my wife grew up there. Absolutely, had a houseboat, and so there's some good connection there. Well, take us back a little bit, Zach, to kind of how all this started for you. I know that you had a band, a lot of rock history, partying, drug, sex, and rock and roll, and the whole thing. Yeah. Jesus got a hold of you, but kind of give us the highlights of kind of how you got all into this and how Jesus has kind of wrecked your life, and now here you are. Yeah.
So I actually grew up in a little bitty town called Bono, and you've probably driven through there 100 times.
Absolutely.
1,200 people. My parents, whenever I was growing up, my grandparents owned that Phillips 66 station that sit on the interstate. It was the only gas station in that area. So we were kind of in a town where everybody knew everybody. My dad had a construction company, and my dream to get out of this little small town was to play sports. I thought if I could get good at basketball, then it would be my ticket out. My family were very involved in church, and very, very much I hold, the reason why I'm where I am today is because of their faith in the Lord and really the roots and the seeds that they planted at an early age, just their faith in Jesus, and constantly seeing them pray for our family and for others, and just really be an example of Christ. So I had that at an early age really instilled in me. And we were in church every Sunday and every Wednesday. And with my dad having a full-time construction job, he also volunteered as a worship leader at church. So I was around music my entire life. Sports was pretty much the other part of my life. I can remember early age seeing Petra and DeGarmo and Key at the Orpheum in Memphis, Tennessee. It was my first concert. And it blew me away. And I got, I can remember listening to my dad's old Keith Green and Russ Taff and Phil Driscoll and, Mylon Lefebvre, Amy Grant, all these records whenever I was a kid, you know, that I can remember putting on a record player and listening to. And then somewhere along the way in my 9th, 10th grade years, kind of got to running around. And I wouldn't really say it was the wrong crowd because these were kids I'd grown up with my whole life, but some of these kids didn't have families who were in church and hadn't been taught, you know, the way I'd been taught. And so you get around some kids that are doing some other things, and the next thing you know, you're doing the same things. And so by my 10th grade year, I'd started experimenting with alcohol, parties and stuff on the weekends. And by the end of my 10th grade year, going into 11th grade, I'd started smoking pot. And by the time my 12th grade year rolled around, you know, we were pretty much every day after basketball practice or, you know, on the weekends going to the truck stop where everybody hung out and, you know, getting high and just, you know, the typical stuff that a lot of kids get caught up with in high school, and didn't think anything about it because everybody I was around was doing the same thing. You know, we were in a small town, and obviously everybody knows everything about everybody. And so when word got out that we were doing some of these things and our basketball coach found out about it, we were kicked off the basketball team. And at that time I was being recruited by Division I schools for a basketball scholarship. And when that happened, I pretty much lost contact with these schools that were recruiting me and lost my scholarships and ended up quitting school my senior year of high school that semester. Just turned from bad to worse, and the school board got involved, and it became this huge ordeal, and we were made out as if we were selling drugs at school. And you know, none of that stuff ever happened, but we were just kind of used as an example for the rest of the kids on the team and the rest of the school. And then I want to say the next year they started implementing drug tests, you know, for athletes and for anybody in high school that were going to be playing on teams or doing anything. And I just remember being completely crushed. Like this was my dream. And I thought, you know, what am I going to do now? I've spent my entire life playing basketball, and you know, what have I got to fall back on? And so I started working for my dad's construction company. I started playing in a men's league, and I met a guy while I was playing in that league that got me a tryout at a junior college in Northwest Arkansas, up around Harrison, Arkansas. And I made the team and got a full scholarship and moved off to school up there. And when I got there, I pretty much fell right back into the same lifestyle because I was on a basketball team now with 10 or 12 other people who were the standout stars from their high school. And also everybody was trying to outdo each other at a party every night to impress some girl. And, you know, I just remember being in this low place in my life, you know, not where I thought I was going to be at 19 years old with, you know, how hard I'd worked to get to where I was. And the day before our very first basketball game, I tore 5 ligaments in my ankle and pretty much ended my basketball career my freshman year. And so I set out that entire freshman year at home while everybody was going on these trips to play basketball. I had picked up my roommate's guitar, and I'd never played a guitar, never held one in my life. And I just remember picking that guitar up, and it just felt like it belonged with me. And I bought a chord chart and posted it to my wall and started teaching myself how to play guitar. And before I knew it, I was writing songs, and I was in a creative writing class my freshman year. So I was taking all the poetry that I was writing and turning them into songs. And I just remember thinking you know, this is exactly what I want to do with the rest of my life. Like, basketball took a backseat at that point. I fell in love with music. I fell in love with the idea that you could really document the seasons of your life and what you were going through at the time, all your feelings, all your emotions. You know, for me, it was a way to escape all the things that were going on in my life. I didn't need drugs or alcohol when I was doing it. Unfortunately, as that progressed, and I started playing in bands and realizing that the drugs and alcohol was part of that lifestyle, I justified the fact that I was doing it and just told myself that was okay as well. And before I knew it, I was drinking, you know, a fifth of whiskey every couple of days, and I was one of those guys that you could hand a handful of pills to at a party, and I would take it. And I lived, you know, as hard as I could. You know, I kind of felt like I was the guy that as soon as the party started, I had to be the guy there first to get it started, and then I didn't want to leave until I was the guy that shut it down. So I lived that way for several years of my life. I went through a divorce in my mid-20s, partially because of my lifestyle and the way I was living. And then in my late 20s, I joined a band. And pretty much after I joined that band, we recorded a record and signed with a European booking agent. And we started touring Europe. And things kind of took off pretty quick. And all this time that's going on, I'm living like, I think I'm Mick Jagger or somebody, and we're this awesome band. But really what's going on is we're touring all over the place 4 days a week and working construction jobs to barely pay our bills just so we can go out and party for another 4 days out on the road and stay away from our families. And in my late 20s, when all this was going on, I met my wife. She had 2 small kids at the time when we met. And I, obviously I knew how to be a good dad. I'd had the role model. My dad was just this awesome man of God. And, here I am living this horrible lifestyle and, convincing her that she needs to be with me and I can help her raise these kids. And our first 4 years of our marriage, it was a living hell. I mean, it was just miserable. And we fought all the time. We talked about getting a divorce all the time. And then, we had a little boy together, and it was just a lot of things were happening at that time in my life. I'd been touring in this band for about 5 years now. We had a little girl on the way. It was 2012. I was getting ready to go to Europe, and we got invited to go to a church in my hometown. And I'd seen the church a million times, and I always told myself I'd never go into that church. It was this huge Southern Baptist church. Everybody called it Six Flags Over Jesus, and it was just this big, big place that was very intimidating. And I just remember getting an invite in the mail, and we walked into that church for the first time, and it was just like something told me this is exactly where I want you to be. And I just remember the pastors and the worship pastors and everybody there being so welcoming to me and my family. Nobody was judging us, because I looked pretty rough in those days. I had really long hair and dressed like a hippie, and they would have had every reason to just kind of be like, nah, you don't really fit in here. But instead, they just loved on us like a church is supposed to. And before I knew it, I was trying to figure out a way to get out of this month-long tour to Europe. And everything was already booked. Everything was already paid for. And so I convinced myself that I could go to Europe and stay clean and sober while I was there, because I'd been in church for a month. And as soon as the plane landed in Spain, I fell back into my old ways and was doing anything and everything I could get my hands on. And a week into that tour, we were driving across Spain one day, and it's so funny. I tell this story. So I was a huge Allman Brothers fans, and I was about that time. Greg Allman had just released an autobiography called My Cross to Bear, and I just remember I had headphones on. I was reading it on an iPad, and I just remember pulling my headphones out for a second, and our bus driver was scanning radio stations, and I heard Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave come across the station somewhere in Spain. And I just remember thinking, man, like, I've never heard this song. And I'd grown up working for my dad's construction company, and we listened to Christian radio wherever we could find it on the job site. So I knew Christian music. It was something that really had been ingrained into my DNA. But I'd never heard this song. This was, their new single in the summer of 2012. And I just remember God speaking to me like, he was like, Zach, I see you in a way that you don't see yourself. And, there's a way out. I've given you this gift, but I didn't give it to you for this reason. If you'll turn it over and use it for me, I'll give you things that you've never dreamed of. And that was just kind of this first time I'd really had this voice of God, like really loud and clear, tell me something. I just remember calling my wife, and I told her when the tour was over, I was going to quit the band and come home. And I kind of kept that secret for 3 weeks while I was out on the road from the rest of my band. But the day I got home, I just fell on my hands and knees and asked my wife and kids to forgive me for everything that had been going on, and all the missed birthdays, all the things that I'd missed out on or been too, messed up to remember. And canceled the rest of my shows with my band, told everybody I was done, and I never looked back. And it was not a pretty time for a couple of years for me with some of the guys in my band in my hometown. But I couldn't explain to them, what was going on. I just knew that for myself and for my family, I needed to make a change. And honestly, I didn't care if I played music ever again. I just wanted to be home and be a dad and live the way that I'd been raised to live. And so I put music down for a few months. But I just remember really for me the turning point before all this ever happened. The day after I came home from Europe, I just remember having this moment in my bedroom after everybody went to work, the kids went to school, where I just fell on my hands and knees for the very first time and just face on the floor, just asking God to just do what he had set out, what his plan was for me. I said, I don't know what that is, if it's to work construction, to just be a dad, if you want me to play music, I don't know, but I don't want to go back to the lifestyle I was in.
We're going to take just a quick break and talk about something that I think is going to be very valuable for you as a Christian songwriter. So check it out.
Do you feel like God's given you a bunch of songs, but you don't know what to do with them? Do you feel like you've got a real call on your life to write, but you're clueless about where to start? Or maybe you've got writer's block and you're wondering if you'll ever get the creative juices flowing again. Well, we've got you covered with NCS membership. NCS membership is all about community and how to grow in this calling you feel deep inside to be heard. We get it. We know that you just want to honor God with your talents and be a good steward of what he's given you. And that's why NCS membership could be your next right step to grow, learn, be challenged, get connected, and ultimately fulfill your dreams to glorify God and reach others with the same passion you feel. It's designed to help you tell your story and to reach listeners who will love your songs. With your NCS membership, you'll receive 2 free song critiques, 24/7 access to valuable masterclasses on topics such as modern hymn writing, worship writing, song form, lyric development, and recording home demos, as well as discounts for other NCS products, and a deep connection into a community of creatives who get you. There are a lot of songwriters out there, so you need to be the best you can be to stand out, be heard, and become the songwriter you were born to be. Just go to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com now to check out all the great benefits of becoming part of a decidedly Christian community of songwriters from all over the world. NCS membership, your next right step to being heard.
Well, I just hope that you'll take advantage of that and check it out. All right? We bring you good stuff here on the Song Revolution podcast. So back to our episode.
I just remember putting music down for about 6 months, and I was working for my dad's construction company. We were going to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. We were involved. And then the church had started asking me to possibly maybe lead a song every once in a while. And I just remember the first time I led worship at a church service. It was the first time I stood on stage and didn't feel like a fake. I didn't feel like I was putting on a show for anybody. I didn't feel like I was having to be somebody else. And I just remember telling my wife, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I picked my guitar up, started writing songs. I wrote 6 songs, went into a studio in my hometown, recorded them with a friend, and released a little EP. Just basically, I did it for myself, just to know that I could still write music and produce something. And, formed a little band at church with some guys that ended up being the worship band. I drug a bunch of guys out of the bar scene in my hometown and got them involved in church. And we started playing at church on Sundays and recorded this little CD and played a few little shows here and there. And a few months later, I was asked to help launch a campus at my church. And I worked for them for a year for part-time. We launched a campus. And the idea was to launch a campus that would reach people kind of that had gone through the things I'd gone through in my past. And when we first launched the campus, Celebrate Recovery was a big part of our core kind of membership. And a year later, they asked me to hire on full-time at the church, and then I worked for them for 2 years. And while I was working for them for those 2 years, we ended up launching another service through that campus. And I became the director of our Refuge campus and worship leader for that campus and connections pastor and everything. I pretty much took on the role of that campus. And, I was exactly where I felt like I needed to be and exactly where I felt like God wanted me. It was a dream come true. I was playing music for a living. I was planning services every week. It was exactly what I wanted to do. And while all this was going on, I found out I was going to have neck surgery. And it really, really just kind of was a big blow to my faith. And just, I worried constantly if this was going to be all right, if it was going to be something I could go through. It got to the point of I almost canceled the surgery a few days before surgery. And my wife, I remember having my wife, she called my family over and we sat and prayed in our living room, you know, that God would just handle everything, you know, and just work it all out, because I didn't know how I was going to provide for my family. I didn't know how I was going to do anything. And right before I was going in to have the surgery, I just remember the church coming to me and telling me they were going to, you know, give me as much time as I needed off, and they were going to pay me my full salary and take care of my family. And they would find somebody to lead the service while I was gone. If I could just stay at home and maybe when I started feeling better, just plan the services. And so it was just kind of one of these God moments where, you know, when my faith started getting weak, you know, he just kind of showed up and did something amazing again. And that was just, for those 2 years of my life there at that church, it was always something like that. Like every time things started getting to a place where I started worrying, he showed up and did something almost to the point of it where it was like, do you really doubt me? You know, can you doubt that I'm going to do this for you? And so after that happened, a guy by the name of Jonathan Smith, who ended up co-writing and producing my record, his wife's family were members of our church, and they were there visiting for Christmas. And he heard me sing and ended up taking me out to coffee the next day and just wanted to hear my story. And I shared my story with him. I gave him the little EP that I'd recorded. A few days later, he calls me back and he's like, man, he's like, dude, I want you to come over to Nashville and just, let's start writing some music and see what happens. And so for the next year, I drove to Nashville about once a month, I guess. So just kind of going over there just to see what was going to happen. I say for a year. I did it for about 6 months. I started going over in June of 2015. And we started riding, and literally the third or fourth trip over to Nashville, I wrote Chainbreaker with him and Mia Fields. And this was like, after being there for a week, I'd written all week long with other people. It was coming in on a Friday. I was ready to go home, see my family. I was tired. My neck was bothering me. I'd had surgery, 6 months before that. So I was still kind of in a place where I was healing. And I just remember I didn't have anything to bring to the table that day. And I was nervous about meeting Mia because I knew she was just a massive songwriter. And I just remember sitting there and telling her my story. And at the time, me and my wife had just really gotten involved in prison ministry through our church. And we were on fire to just do prison ministry. And the title Chainbreaker was thrown out by Mia, and I kind of laughed at her like, we can't write a song called Chainbreaker. There's a big song called Break Every Chain, out on the radio right now. And she was like, you can do whatever you want to. And she said, and honestly, if you write it, people are going to believe you. And I was like, huh. And I didn't really know what she meant. She was just like, you're a big dude. She was like, you seem like somebody that could sing a song called Chainbreaker. And she was like, no, let's write it. And Jonathan sat down at a piano, and I just remember the first chords he played. As soon as he played it in my head, I said, if you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles. And they were like, whoa. And so the song happened so fast, we almost couldn't write it down. It was just one of those songs. Like, here it is 20 minutes later, we've got this song, and I'm sitting in the room just kind of like, wow, this could be something. And I drove back to Arkansas, and I just prayed that God would just take this song all over the world, like just blow it up. I was like, nobody knows who I am. But I want you to use this song to speak to anybody and everybody that needs to hear it. And so at that time, the record label didn't even know who I was. They just saw this tall guy walking around the studio quite a bit. And so we didn't even play the song for anybody for a few months. And I remember the A&R guy at the record label heard it one day in the publisher's office and said, who is that? And Jonathan said, that's this guy, Zach, I've been bringing over. And so they asked if I had any more songs, and he sent a few more. And Blaine Barkus came to visit me at my church. I sat through a worship service. I took him to lunch. And then we sat in the parking lot of the church and talked for about an hour of just kind of the possibilities of what the next year could look like if I was interested in putting a band together and doing a showcase and seeing if the record label, was interested. And I was like, of course. And this was in November of 2015 when this was going on. And he called me 3 days later and said he played the demo for Chainbreaker during a staff meeting with the entire record label, and they want to sign me off the demo. And I was like, what? And so I just remember sitting in my office crying like a baby, and I was like, wow, is this really happening? And he was like, if you are interested, welcome to the family. And so we worked on everything through the holidays, and I remember I signed in February 2016. We released that song in June of 2016, and it just took off, by the end of the year. And then while that was going on, I wrote Old Church Choir with a couple other guys, Kobe Wedgeworth and Ethan Hulse, and it was just another one of those songs where Chainbreaker was doing really well at the time, and the idea that I had this old church choir kind of living inside me because I had this kind of old gospel vibe, and my idea for it was I'd grown up my whole life in all these little backwoods churches in Arkansas, going to revivals with my grandparents and gospel quartets and things like that. And I just remember at an early age having this encounter, this experience with God that I couldn't explain to anybody. And honestly, it really terrified me. And so for years in my life, I would get in these church services where I would just get this overwhelming feeling that I just couldn't, I wasn't going to be able to take it. Like I was just going to break down. That I would run to the bathroom and have a little, kind of crying spell, and then I wouldn't go to church for months. It was just something that freaked me out. And I know now it was just God. He had a call on my life, but I couldn't see it. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't explain it. And so all these years of my life, the fact that I wasn't pursuing God, he was still pursuing me. And he had this plan for my life all these years that I was slowly starting to see that he had put together and allowed me all these opportunities to live through and walk through, so that he could give me this platform now to share my story and to reach kind of the common man or the manly man, of the world. Because there's so many, there's not a lot of just and I don't mean this in a bad way, but there just hasn't been a real manly kind of thing in Christian music. And it's been so crazy, all the bikers and all the just rough looking dudes that come up to me now, or I get messages from that are like, man, I don't even listen to Christian music, but I love what you're doing. I feel like God just gave me that opportunity to find a niche in Christian music where he said, I want you to be that voice for kind of the common man, kind of the outcast, or the person that, didn't really feel like they fit in at church, but, speak to them, let them know that there was a reason I came and died for them. And it was because I knew they couldn't be perfect. And when they find that out, when they're able to live in that freedom and knowing that we don't have to have it all together. God never said we did. He said, he came and died for our sins because he was the perfect one. We just have to die to ourselves every day. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. It's constantly, renewing that and learning every day to try and walk more and more of who he is and be who he is. But, it's so hard, I think. I think we make it difficult as Christians to try to have it all together and be perfect when that's not it. Nobody wants to try to live life trying to be perfect. We just get to live in the fullness of joy of what God's done, on the cross and what he's given us. And so, I feel like that's kind of been my mission, is to just write these songs and share my story, my road, kind of my heart of where I've been and what God's done, and just let them know that, no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, he's right there, and honestly, he knew you before, you were born. He knew the hairs on your head and had a plan for your life. But the biggest thing is we get in the way of that plan, and until you surrender your life to the Lord, he doesn't reveal that plan to you,
Yeah. Well, it's obvious that you've yielded. Just the powerful story that you've just shared, man. It's just so awesome to get the backdrop of your whole record. I mean, you got 15 amazing songs, including a little tribute to the Allman Brothers with a revamped Midnight Rider. I love it. So that's awesome. But everything you said, because I've reviewed your whole new record, the Chainbreaker Deluxe Edition, it's like I hear your story that comes out, all the way through Song of Deliverance, of course, Chainbreaker and Old Church Choir, but Survivor and the tender acoustic to the table. My Liberty, Fear is a Liar is a great song. Everything Changed is a great song. Revival, So Good to Me, Home. Freedom. Washed Clean, the live version there at the end. So, everything you've said, it's just like it puts your album in perfect perspective. So we only have just a couple of minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time. So obviously God's hand is on you. This is all new. This is like, 2016 to barely 2018. We're just like a year and a half maybe into this whole recording, writing, publishing, Jonathan, Mia, the whole thing, Provident label, Grammy award.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's been so much. I don't know that I've had the time yet to stop and take it all in, I played close to 200 shows this last year, and we moved from Arkansas to here, and I think I maybe stayed in the house that we live in maybe a month if I've been here that long this year. And so it's just been so crazy, but that's another thing. Like God had prepared me and my wife and my family for this, from the lifestyle I lived before to always being on the run. And, my wife hated the lifestyle. She hated me being gone, but like she knows now that there's a purpose behind it. She doesn't have to worry if she's going to get a phone call that I'm dead. You know what I mean? Like she knows that I'm in good company and that what I'm doing now, is something that she doesn't have to worry about. And the kids and her, there's never going to be a place that I'm at or playing that they're not welcome or they can't come. And so it's just, man, it's been really exciting. It's really cool, like to just see, looking back on, I'll be 40 this year, just on my life, and see where, I can start. I'm seeing the little things that God was doing whenever I was a kid, whenever I was in high school, the things He was doing, places He had me that, and then the places that He kept me from being in, and,
sure.
And the trouble that He got me out of, just so I could, have this moment to do that for Him and to be His, be His voice and vessel and just share my story,
Well, you're doing a fabulous job of it, obviously. And I know you've got a great support team around you, this kind of thing. Yes, God's all over it, but you've got a lot of great people around you that are helping you do that. Now, our audience on the podcast, I know we have a lot of people that are not songwriters that listen because we have great guests and everything, but, what kind of, quick advice would you have for aspiring Christian songwriters out there?
Man, just write a lot. For me, I write a lot of songs. My plan, we actually just started writing for a new record, hopefully for this fall. And I'm hoping to have 60 or 70 songs by the end of June to pick 10 from, And that's the thing. Like, I think so many people don't understand how many songs you have to write to get those good ones. But then the other thing, I think even more importantly than that, is if your relationship and your walk is not in the right place with God, and you're not having your quiet time, if you're not, reading scripture, if you're not connecting with Him, then obviously your songs are going to suffer that you're trying to write for the church or for, the Lord. A lot of times, just picking up a scripture and reading it for, an hour in the morning, reading through some verses in the Bible, just gets you in that space where you need to be at when you go in to a songwrite. And I think the hardest thing for most people is we get in front of God, you know what I mean? Like, instead of staying behind Him. And I think that's been the hardest thing for me, is kind of my fast-paced lifestyle and always wanting something more. Like, you finish a song and it's like, okay, well, what's next? What's on to the next one? But it's just like learning to walk in what God's doing in that moment. And it's the same way with songwriting. Like, kind of let Him take the lead on these songs. Like, and I think writing from your heart and from your experiences and what you're genuinely going through, I think that is what people connect to. Obviously there's a formula to writing a pop song or anything, and you could probably do that and make a living at it. But like for me, I want to write songs that just really, connect with what I'm going through in this moment in my life. And like right now, I've seen this just unbelievable hand of God and mercy and grace on my life and what He's done over the last year. And I think sometimes as songwriters, we figure out what's going on in our lives, and we can write that same song 10 or 20 times, in a different way that relates to somebody different. So I would just be encouraging to them to just stay in tune with God and what He's got planned for your life, and also write as many songs as you possibly can, because, it might take 10 or 20 to get that one.
It's cool, man. Hey, listen, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you and acknowledge God's grace on you in this time, and just
Sure.
pray for you and your family. Because success has its own challenges. It's like you can go from obscurity where, there's certain challenges and hardships and trials and all that. But when you're on a fast train like you are, that comes with its own challenges as well. So I'm going to encourage, I know I'm going to be praying with you, buddy, excited, thrilled for all of the success, and just praying for your continued sobriety, mentally, emotionally, and in every way, as this fast train just takes off. So congratulations. Thank you so much for taking some time with us today on the podcast. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, buddy, we're going to be looking for that new record, and just continue to celebrate God's goodness in your life.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, everybody, Zach Williams. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show today. I'm blown away with the encouragement and inspiration that every guest brings, and today was certainly no different. If you want even more encouragement and inspiration to take your songwriting to the next level, be sure to check out NCS membership over on our site at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. We're all about empowering you to become the best Christian songwriter that you can be, and NCS membership is simply the fastest and easiest way to get there. Become the songwriter that you were born to be by joining NCS membership today. I'll see you next time on the Song Revolution podcast.